I've recently spoken to some friends who have said that they won't be voting this November. Because they say one vote doesn't even matter, and even if it did, both parties are basically the same anyways. Well, I really think we need to spend a couple minutes addressing this. Now, I understand your apathy. Many of us have become discouraged and disillusioned with Obama. It's been nearly 4 years and we really haven't seen much change at all. Believe me when I say it though, if Mitt Romney gets elected, we will indeed see some change. Change right back to the Bush-era policies that got us in this mess in the first place. We'll see cuts to public education and cuts to programs that help the poor. A disappearance in funding for Planned Parenthood and the Affordable Care Act. An increase in tax cuts for the rich and those gambling with our money on Wall Street. Right now, there are two competing visions for the future of this country. Whether you look at healthcare, the economy, taxes, or the environment, the difference between these parties couldn't be more clear. So let's take a look at that. First, the economy. We have another video on the economy, so here I'll just have a brief overview. In all of Republican policy, there is reflected a deep belief in individualism. They believe the individual is sovereign, and that all that we achieve is just a reflection of our own intelligence and perseverance. Therefore, they believe that the successful owe nothing back to the society that created the conditions for their success. Because of this, they continue to attack any program that helps the poor. Because as far as they're concerned, if you're poor, it's your own damn fault. They continue to try to slash the budgets for public education and for Medicare. The Republicans recently made it to where now student debt is permanent. So if you take out a student loan, even if you declare bankruptcy, you can't get rid of that debt. And at the same time, they're rewarding the rich with tax cuts for their private jets and their ballet dancing horses. Last year, Mitt Romney got $77,000 in tax credits for his dressage horse. And his plan, if elected, is to give himself even more write-offs. Apparently, Mitt Romney thinks public education is not as important as equestrian dance. The Democrats, on the other hand, they recognize that much of someone's success is only possible because they exist within society. We work at their businesses and we buy their products. They have access to roads, fair access to electricity, protection of property by the police, the internet, and 1,000 other tiny things. These people went to schools and they learned from teachers. Outside of this confines of society, their wealth is nothing more than a bunch of green paper. The Democrats understand that those who are successful within a society owe something back to the society that made their success possible. That's why they have continued to defend programs that help the poor and the middle class, because they understand that we are all in this together, as opposed to the Republicans who are only in it for themselves. What about social differences? The Republicans have continued to fight any hint of progress to the point where they're actually dragging us backwards. They've implemented unnecessary voter ID laws in swing states that will disproportionately affect students, the poor, minorities, and the elderly just to ensure a victory in November. They continue to insist, despite what 99% of scientists are saying, that climate change is a hoax. They continue to fight any legislation that will prevent discrimination against the gay community. They're trying to destroy unions wherever they can, the very thing that created a middle class in this country. They continue to deny the mountains of evidence that say medical marijuana helps people with terrible conditions. They turn their backs on the First Amendment in order to prevent the building of mosques, while at the same time using the First Amendment to deny women proper access to health care. It seems the only rights they really do respect are the rights of major corporations. With the recent ruling from the Republican-run Supreme Court, corporate speech is now money because corporations are now people. Now, the Democrats have not done all we've asked, but they have continued to fight this regression of basic, fundamental American rights. Most of the Democrats want to progress nearly as much as we do, but they won't act unless we make our demands clear. What you really have to ask yourself is, what do you want from your government? Do you want a government that supports Main Street or a government that supports Wall Street? Do you want to see tax cuts for the middle class or tax cuts for the rich? Do you think we should respect the rights of everybody or just the rights of a few? Now, the Republicans have not always been as conservative as they are now. The Tea Party, which is really only a minority of Republican voters, has been able to drag them much further to the right in recent years. And how did such a small group do this? Well, they hit the streets, they got people excited, they garnered media attention, they vote in mass, And finally, they get their politicians elected. This gets them noticed. And that's a big hint to the youth of America. If we could only get out and vote in numbers, if we could support candidates that share in our values, then we will get noticed as well, and we can finally have a voice in this fight. More important than that, though, after the Tea Party gets their candidates elected, they continue to put pressure on them. They pay attention and they make their demands clear. They also make it clear that if the Republican candidates don't support the laws they want, don't vote the way they want, don't introduce the legislation they call for, then the Tea Party will find someone who will. And that has made it so now every Republican has gotten in line with the rest of the party, meaning the Tea Party. If we would only act, if we could only follow their example, then we could do the very same thing. We could get the Democrats to line up behind us, because the Republicans surely won't. Now, I understand many of us are very disappointed, but to turn our back on democracy is the very last thing that we should do. If we don't vote, then we do exactly what the Republicans want. Not voting is basically the same as giving them half of a vote. The youth, through voting and donating their time to Obama's campaign, are what allowed us to elect the first black president. If we don't do the same thing in 2012, there's a very good chance Mitt Romney wins. And the Republican agenda will become American policy. We recently saw that the Arab youth is willing to go out, fight, and die for their democracy. And many of us can't even be bothered to go out and vote for ours.